Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to our second Product Tank San Francisco in person in, I think, about 3 years. So we're really excited to finally be back together because even watching the conversations that just happened, I mean, Zoom boxes, they just don't replace that. So this is all about community and being able to be together. And we're really excited that you came out also with the weather. We were like, oh, we thought we were going to have a really good turnout, but the weather had other ideas. So it's great to have you here. My name is Glenn. I am recently have become the lead organizer for Product Tank San Francisco, so I'm even more excited to have you all here. I started the Product Tank Bellevue chapter. I lived in the Bay Area previously 17 years ago and then moved to Seattle, where I've been for the last 17 years. While I was there, we started our Bellevue Product Tank, which is still going, and now I'm here and really excited to be part of this community and with you all. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an intro about what is this? Why are we here? But before I do, how many people here are first-timers? They've never been to a Product Tank before. Good number. That is awesome. Well, I can tell you, you came to the right place. This is just, I've been involved with this Product Tank community, which is worldwide, for about 7 years. I have met incredible people like our speaker tonight, like Yana, and it is just a really, really amazing community that you are becoming part of. So you can see on this map all the different places. These are all the different Product Tank chapters around the world. So it's everywhere. And just to go a little bit back into history, how many people here have heard of or been to the Mind the Product events? So the connection between the two is Product Tank are these grassroots meetups that happen all over the world that bring together folks that are interested in product. You do not have to have your product manager badge to come in the door, as you saw. We love to have people coming from all different backgrounds. And then Mind the Product is one of the largest events in the world that brings together product managers, and the two are very well connected and kind of born from each other. And what we really care about is product management as a craft. We want to grow the craft of product management. We want to bring more people to product. I love seeing all the different faces here because product is for everyone. And like a lot of other industries, there's been plenty of gatekeeping. That has to stop. Anybody is welcome into product. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can get involved with this community. One of those is Product Tank, and we're always looking for speakers as well. So you can contact us if you're interested in speaking. Of course, you can start your own Product Tank for people that came from other parts. When I started the Bellevue Product Tank, there was a Seattle chapter, but I knew that people were not going to want to cross the dreaded 520 bridge at 5 o'clock to go to those meetups. So I was like, oh, well, we've got enough companies here. Let's start something in our area. So you definitely can start a Product Tank anywhere. Of course, we want you to still come to this one. Mind the Product has great articles. It's a great website with a lot of good resources for product managers. As a matter of fact, Kedeki, one of our organizers, recently was interviewed and featured on that site. So definitely go there, great resource. And you can become part of Mind the Product, and they have an amazing Slack community, which I'll talk quickly about. I have learned so much. I mean, this is a Slack community that has like 60,000 people in it. And it's folks at all different stages of their product careers. You'll see CPOs there, you'll see CEOs there, you'll see aspiring PMs there, and they've really tried to create what I would call a psychologically safe type environment where anybody can ask any question and get advice from really seasoned leaders. I definitely have grown in my craft through my involvement in the community and through being part of that Slack, but it's also a great place to find mentors and also to mentor others And I've had several mentees that I met through my engagement with that community, with that Slack community. You know about our meetup, you're here. So I mentioned MTP, Mind the Product, the event, and there's two major ones, one in London and one in the US. And the next one is coming up in the US, June 14th, and they're adding an extra day of workshops. Tickets are going to be available now. It's a great event. It's not like other events. I've been to multiple Mind the Product events. It's amazing speakers that are really forward-thinking. It will change you just going to that event. And I'm not just, I'm not paid by Mind the Product to say that, but I've experienced it. It's really worth it. And you're going to also see a huge influx of people coming into San Francisco for that event, a lot of product people. So even if you're not going to the event, it's a great time to network. And we'll be announcing that we'll actually be hosting a product tank during that time as well. So, okay, so as I mentioned, we were on a hiatus. We've recently come back, and this is our current organizing team. So if you can all raise your hands. We've got Albert, who has been kind of running Product Tank San Francisco for a long time, and he's a mine of knowledge. Mike, who manages our volunteers. Ketiki, who recently joined us, who's doing the speaker curation, and me, who recently I've become the lead. Want to thank our sponsors. This can't happen, we don't get paid. This can only happen through companies and organizations that step up to help us. Really excited. Thank you, Microsoft, for hosting us in this reactor space, and Albina. Let's give a round of applause for Albina, who has been awesome to work with to make this happen and provide us the food. And so, enough talking from me. Before we get to our speaker, we thought, let's do something fun. Let's have I'll call it an ice cooler rather than an icebreaker, because you're all beautiful people who I don't see the hearts are so hard, but let's do something fun. So what I want you to do is look at the person that's next to you and ask each other these three questions. If you were a hero, what would your superpower be? What is the weirdest food you have eaten? And what is your favorite place to visit? Just take 2 or 3 minutes, get to know each other. Also, of course, say your name, introduce yourself, and then we'll come back in 3 minutes and we'll continue on. Okay, everybody, we're going to continue, but before we do, how was that? How'd you like that game or that exercise? Keep it thumbs up, thumbs down for this kind of thing for future events. Thumbs up, sweet, awesome. And thank you, Ketiki, who helped us put this together. So now, the moment of truth. We bring on, I'm not supposed to make her nervous. Really excited to have Yana Welinder speaking to us. She is the CEO of Craftful. I met Yana following her on Twitter. Yana likes to ask a lot of really good questions to product managers, and then gets really good responses and mines those responses, I think, using their product, and then comes back out with what the results were. But Yana's done some really amazing things. I don't know if you've heard of this really cool product, If This Then That. Really cool home automation product, and does a zillion other things. I use it. Yana was the head of product for If This Then That. Yana has a deep product history. Yana has spoken at the UN. Yana is a champion, of course, for women, and also one of the founders of the SF chapter of Women in Product. And again, she's now the CEO of Craftful, and doing some really cool AI things around product. So it's my pleasure to introduce Yana Welinder.
Thank you, everyone. Really excited to chat with you guys. I have to admit that this is the first in-person talking thing that I'm doing. That's not true. I've done panels, but just having this many people look at you at once. I think I need to get used to that again. I have spoken to the UN. that was a true point, but a very long time ago. The topic is something I'm really, really excited about because, obviously my company, we build on ChatGPT technology, so I'm personally excited about it, but it's also just on everyone's minds right now, right? Like, how is this going to change my profession? Everyone's talking about it, everyone's worrying about it, everyone's being excited about it. There's a few different ways people go, and I think the exciting great news for product managers is really that this technology or generative AI generally is going to supercharge product managers and make us superheroes or essentially be able to do much more. And the other piece is that it's actually going to create more job opportunities for PMs. And that's going to be a little bit more indirect because it's going to come from the fact that you can now start companies with essentially many fewer people overall, but generally there's always going to be a need for product managers to provide that strategic direction. So there's just going to be much more job opportunity and much more interesting work, like strategic work to be done. So that's kind of the exciting news that I generally would like to talk about. And to give you a little bit of background on my journey, so yes, I'm a CEO, founder of Craftful, working with LLMs applied to product management specifically. Before that, I was at IFT. Before that, I was a second PM at a unicorn here out in Redwood City. And the problem that I'm excited to solve is really the problem that I've had pretty much all the way through my product management career, which is essentially how do I listen to all of the users that are trying to communicate something to me, the product manager, and I just don't have time to listen to them all. And we do all of this user research that we do proactively, and have all of these videos that we listen to. But then at the same time, we're having users talk to us in various channels. So in IFT's case, it was in subreddit, but also on Twitter, but also in Zendesk support tickets, in App Store reviews. And so trying to make sense of all of that data, I was really, really excited to try to do that, but it was always something that was really, really hard. And as I started personally playing with large language models in the early days, one thing that I tried to apply it to was to that very problem. So how do we try to analyze all of this feedback that we get from users and make sense of it? And one thing that I discovered was that large language models or generative AI isn't very good at it because it is, or I should say, wasn't very good at it because it primarily was really good at generating text. Summarizing was not something that it did really well. And so I continued experimenting with it over the years, and at some point discovered that actually now the technology is getting much better. And that's when I decided to build a solution around it. But how does this impact everyone, right? And you've all seen this general slide. In fact, I think we probably all saw it coming into the event, or in the slides right before this. This is obviously very similar to the product tank logo, right? Shows us, the product managers, at the center of the technology that we're building, the business that we're trying to build around that technology, the customer. And so it's like this perfect strategic role. But in reality, we're doing all of these different things. It's a ton. And the problem is that we can't do it all. And so we can't listen to all of the feedback we're getting from users. We can't always include them in the development process in a really helpful way. We can't make sure that all the stakeholders are always informed. And most importantly, while trying to do all of those different things, we don't have time to do as much strategy work as we would like to do, which is really kind of when we think about that previous diagram with us sitting in the middle and having that strategic role, that's really what we think about as product management, but ultimately we have very little time to do that. And so the exciting part about generative AI is that it can come in and help us be more strategic. So I'm sure you've all seen folks post on like Twitter and LinkedIn, all of these like lists of prompts, how to use ChatGPT to solve X, right? Good news. I'm going to give you no prompts. I am not the bearer of prompts. What I want to talk about is generally what can this technology bring us, product managers? How is it going to amplify us over time? And the other thing to kind of think about for that is that when you use ChatGPT today, in this like very early stage that it's in right now, with all of the specific quirks and limitations that it has, that's not a representation of what generative AI is and will be. It's just a point in time where this product works in a certain way. And I think, if you've played with generative AI over the time, or you've played with GPT technology from kind of the early days of, I say the early days, but it's really just been 3 years, but GPT-3, when it first launched in beta in the summer of 2020 until it's now, that's changed a lot. There's a ton of things that have changed about how it works. And that rapid change and development is going to continue to happen. So you're going to see a change in how it works. And so when you think about when you're using ChatGPT and you're sort of like, well, it's good at this kind of thing, but it's not good at that kind of thing. Well, that kind of thing it may actually be very good at in a couple of months or like in a year, right? So, so I think we kind of need to be fairly expansive in terms of what we can imagine this kind of technology doing. That's not necessarily constrained by the specific technical limitations today, which is why I'm not bringing you any specific prompts because they are designed around that constraint. But feel free to go on LinkedIn and find them. There's a ton. So what do I think is going to be kind of the primary things that generative AI is going to help us with? First and foremost, of course, user research. Of course, I'm going to say that. That's the solution we're building. And so being able to bring together data from various sources and summarize that data from the specific lens of product insights. So not just generally give me a summary, but specifically what are the product the feature requirements that users are requesting, what is their tone when they're requesting them, how frequently are those requests coming up, like specifically what are they asking for, what's the context then, like all of those different questions you will be able to ask. But then I think the next piece that's slightly more interesting is what do they not say, right? Because when you have the ability to ask one specific user who gave you feedback at one point a follow-up question that is something that you're trying to find out that they didn't say, but it's related to what they said. Once you can do that kind of thing, but at scale, with all of the users who've previously given you feedback, that changes everything. Because that means that you don't need to necessarily curate a list of users, a limited list of users, and then ask those users everything. You can just ask one question to one individual in the channel where they previously gave you feedback related to the feedback that they previously gave you, and it can be a tweet. Like it can be a response to a tweet, or it can be a response to an email, or it can be a response to an App Store review, right? And then suddenly you're able to do user research in a completely different way and be able to find out so much more in a way that's so much less annoying to users and is so much more representative of your actual user base because you're asking all of them as opposed to just a select group of people. So that's one example of the kind of things you will be able to do. That's just very, very different from how we operate today, but supercharges what we do. Helping you to build a roadmap, right? Like once you have all of those insights, imagine if you can then take those insights and get and help frame your specific like product requirements or product definition using templates, best practices, but they're actually applied to your specific product. So you're not taking a template and thinking about what your product is, but something that feels like someone is doing a lot of that work for you, so you can keep that big strategic goal while being amplified by this technology. Helping communicate with stakeholders. When I think about stakeholders, I include the dev team in that because I want to be as expansive as possible. And One thing that you can think about is when you're defining a feature and you're assigning that feature, and that feature has all of that information, that kind of what were all the requests that led up to that requirement, and also what was the internal discussion that led up to that feature, and you assign that to someone on your dev team, suddenly they know the why, right? They not only have access to like a summarized version of the why, but they can go as deep or shallow as they want it to go, and find out everything. And so you can have that engineer that will always kind of be like, but why? Does anyone really want that? And have the answer without necessarily having to do all of that back and forth, because it's all there. Side note, that engineer will likely not be a code writer. She will be an AI operator just like you, right? So kind of it's just a different framework to think about. I think you can probably just based on these things you can imagine what you will be able to do for like launch prep and product marketing, because after all, generative AI was always best at generating text, so it's only going to become better at generating collateral and marketing material. But there's just so much wealth in what it can provide you with across all of these different topics. And so, I'm sure you guys have seen this meme. I am the bearer of memes. I didn't bring prompts, but I brought the memes. The piece is that product managers are not going to be replaced by AI. They will be supercharged by AI. But in order to do that, they will really need to figure out how to be supercharged, right? Like how to leverage all of that capability. For us, that's what we're building. We're trying to provide that like PM AI interface to make that as simple as possible over time to leverage all of that capability. But I think it's going to take time, and there's a lot about the technology that will need to evolve for it to be able to support all of those different use cases. But I think it's definitely there, and ultimately it's going to give us all superpowers, exciting superpowers. The piece about it is that it's a big technological breakthrough, probably definitely bigger than the iPhone, possibly bigger than the internet, and so it's just the beginning, but it's a really exciting journey. I'm going to pause there and move into Q&A.
Thank you very much, Yana. So we have some microphones. Kediki, do you want to maybe help? We've got plenty of time for Q&A, so ask all your questions. Thank you, Yana.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. That was really fascinating. I was going to ask if you could expand a little bit more on the PM using AI and then handing it to a programmer, and that programmer is also an AI operator. If you could expand a bit about that, and if that's something you think is going to happen in the present state, maybe like, when I say present, maybe like 6 months from now or currently, or is this like a few years out in terms of capability or perhaps reality and vision?
I mean, I think the question is to what degree, right? Because at this point, like a PM can use Craftful or can use ChatGPT directly, and their engineer may use Copilot, right? And so that's already happening. That's happening with our users, right? But then, like, to what extent, right? And so at the point where there's absolutely no code writing going on, and all of these tasks are like that I listed out are done by AI, I think that's somewhere in the future, and that's in my mind that's probably a few years out. Hopefully that answered your question.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, this is really informative. I'm George, by the way. So my question is that, so I work for a large tech company, and in the list of functions that you said, let's look at user research. how can we integrate ChatGPT into like our company in a secure, confidential manner? Because like you said, we have all these sort of touch points from app reviews to internal surveys to user interviews, and you want to consolidate all that. What are they really saying? But a lot of that is confidential and secure. So how do we sort of break that, or is there any systems in place for us to get it in that manner?
Yeah, so for example, when we use ChatGPT, and we actually have had this in our products, both for GPT use and ChatGPT use, we've opted out of having our customers' data being trained, used in training the model. Now that's happening by default, and so you can opt into. That was one of the latest announcements from OpenAI, that by default they're not training on the data, so it is kept secure and it is kept confidential and is yours. Of course, like there may be for big organizations, you may get to a point where you need it to like run on-prem, and so that's going to be its own separate challenge. And there are companies that are building for that particular requirements, but generally speaking, I think all the different products are moving in that direction to be able to support requirements from large corporations. Yeah.
We know that AI these days are very comfortable lying to you confidently. How are you dealing with that in your product?
Yeah, so I can tell you about how we're dealing with that, but I think also just generally, I think it's important to build in aspects of into any kind of product to be able to help the users to double check, to check in, to see how is it doing. In our product, hopefully you guys can see this. This may be too small, but if you look at the list of feature requests for the Figma app here, there's a percentage next to it. This is actually a new feature that we're either rolling out tonight or tomorrow. So check in later or now. And so you can click on that percentage. And when you click on that percentage, I wish I could kind of give you guys a live demo. You get to the reviews where this feedback originated from, so you can find out like specifically what was said. The purpose of this is less to give for the double checking, though that's another way to do it. The purpose is so that you can see the context, because sometimes you don't just want to know, okay, people want to be able to edit files in the Figma app. You want to see what did they specifically say. What else are they saying about this? And so you can do that, or you can chat with the feedback to learn more.
Thank you, Yana. So I'm very interested as an example of GPT application based product. I'm, to be honest, not that familiar yet with how GraphQL works. So I'm curious if you could maybe explain a little bit what are the data inputs and how can I, as a product manager, interact with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so as a PM, when you log in, you have the ability to import your data. So you can either, if you're a mobile app PM, you can select your App Store reviews in there, or if you have support tickets from Zendesk or Intercom or Front, you can OAuth your account and import your support tickets. Or if you have a bunch of user research material, like interviews or call transcripts, you can import those, and then you get these lists back. So you get a list of feature requests, you get a list of most loved features, you get top complaints, you get competitors mentioned, and then you're able to then chat with the feedback that you got to learn other kinds of things. Things that you may be specifically interested in, either to follow up on the feature requests or the things that people love in your product, or to just ask something completely different that you hope is going to be in your body of feedback. And if it's not in your body of feedback, then that's the next feature that we're building that I kind of touched upon earlier, to be able to go out and learn more from your existing users.
Thank you. And so to what level of specificity does it go into recommending? what would be, does it, rank in terms of percentage, like these are things to consider, or what kind of advice does it give you?
Yeah, mostly it just summarizes what the users say, and so then like you still need to be the PM that can say actually, while users may be saying that they want the ability to edit files in the Figma app, that's not actually a good idea. But here is what would solve their underlying problem, and that's where you would want to be able to dig deeper onto that feature request and learn and figure out what is that actual feature that would be useful. And that's where I think the strategic part of product management will always be there, that we humans are so good at.
Hi, just one question. I'm gonna enter the workforce in a bit, as in I do my own stuff, but like I'm just scared with this notion where in a very near future you would have only a few companies that have all these huge amounts of data. You can replace PMs with automated tools that help you prioritize what you need in your product. Wouldn't that lead to a concentration of power with a very select few companies? Like these GPT models and everything that we're using right now, it's cool, like they can do a lot of stuff, but it's also scary because then what happens to everyone's creativity? Then you just it's just a scary future, I guess. So
I honestly think that that our human creativity can get unleashed when we don't have to do the tedious tasks. And really what it's going to help us with is to be able to, like all the logistics, all the stuff that we spend our days doing, not do, and instead apply our creativity as much as possible. I guess that's the bright future that I envision with this, is to be able to do more of what we love and less of what we don't like. At least I don't like.
like the scary part is when you can charge people off of that, like the bigger companies can create tools that do works which used to hire people, you can automate these humans. In a few years we find it then, not immediately. But then it creates this very vicious cycle of unemployment and people trying to reskill, but you can't really reskill because you can't really compete with a model that can essentially do everything, that's the scary part.
I think, I guess, I mean, it's possible, right? Every possible scenario is possible when the world is changing quickly. And I think when we first got the internet, it was very difficult to foresee all the different implications of that technology, and we're still grappling with the goods and the bads of that, right? There's definitely positive and negative implications. I think I can see the positives. I can see some things leading to worse outcomes. But I do think that for most part, it's going to create more opportunities for people across the board.
So really quickly, you mentioned essentially that for the product manager in the age of ChatGPT, product strategy sounds like something that will stay essential to the role of product management, right? So as companies move to productize this technology, what do you think are some of the hallmarks of a good product strategy surrounding, implementing or integrating ChatGPT into your product?
I think there's. Are you asking about specifically for the PM who is integrating the technology, or the PM who's using the technology?
Integrating.
Integrating the technology. Yeah. So I think I think that the way to think about the technology is as any kind of technology. Just that like when we started getting different types of using AWS to unlock lots of different things, right? And I think of this as sort of like an intelligence layer that you can use to solve existing problems. But ultimately, you want to focus on the problem, not the technology, but what are the problems out in the world that can be solved, right? Like I guess in our case, PMs having to analyze lots of user data. That's the problem. and then we're just applying this technology to solve that. We're not trying to kind of re-architect the technology to do something specific. So I think that's kind of in terms of generative AI use cases that I'm seeing out there, the most powerful ones are structured around just the customer pain point, like always, and then applying technology to that problem, as opposed to trying to think about the technology and the cool things it can do. And can we just like make it a little bit cooler and then see if people are gonna be excited about that.
Okay, so to that extent, it sounds like you're saying, really ground the problems that you're trying to tackle in the technology in its current state, and in terms of the pain points that you can currently address with technology in ChatGPT today. Now, in terms of trying to strategize futuristically what it could do.
I think it's really hard to know futuristically what it's going to do beyond what you can see in the current technology. Not specifically ChatGPT, but if you look at like what LLMs are capable of today, you can use that to try to solve current problems. But I think it's pretty hard to know exactly what LLMs will be able to do like 10 years from now.
Which Gen AI applications on the market today impress you, besides practical?
I'm pretty impressed by a lot of the image generation technology, but I would say probably actually DALL-E is the one that I'm impressed with the most. There's some specific use cases, but I'm struggling to remember the names of the specific companies. But the ones I'm mostly excited about are the folks who are solving for like specific professions, like their tools essentially disrupting the legal industry or supporting doctors, essentially applying it to very specific, fairly narrow use cases, but are actually very powerful. Those are the ones that I've so far found the most compelling out there.
Hello. So I have a question regarding the user surveys and the user research part. How do you think this can help when there are different companies that are competing in the same, let's say, scope or same market for the same product? How if this is gonna make the companies having a more homogeneous view and remove the competitive edge of how you interpret the user research? And also, does this allow for a more sort of like a hoax attacks of having like a feedback that are sometimes, let's say if a company is now gonna release a new release of their product, there might be an online attack that is skewing the user feedbacks in a certain way that it appears to in a different way. So your top, for example, most loved feature might be something that is not actually representing the user community, but just representing a certain period of a targeted attack.
I think it will be fairly easy to spot those kind of use cases. And in fact, what I've seen is actually the opposite, that you're able to leverage this to get insights that you previously weren't able to see. Because the use case I think about a lot that when I saw it, it kind of just blew my mind, was looking at App Store reviews for dating apps and seeing that there was a lot of complaints around kind of racial minorities, that they weren't getting good matches. And I think what was happening, and when I first saw it, I actually thought that it was the way it was. Like the way it was summarized, it looked racist, and so I had to double check and what it actually was the opposite. It was like the feedback was very powerful, and I think what was happening is that for a lot of optimization that's been happening with dating apps, they're really just looking at how the majority is using the app and optimizing for that, right? Because that's what you do with regular analytics, and the voice of minorities is getting lost until you can actually listen to the voice and see the last item on the top feature requests. Minorities are requesting better matching, right? So suddenly you can get a much better sense of what your user base is asking at a whole. And then yes, someone may do like a malicious review attack. I'm struggling to come up with a good DDoS name for it. But then it would be fairly easy to spot something like that because you'd see a spike and then you check what is the spike and then you see that it's all like framed the same way or like there's something about it that's actually like very unuser-like.
So, from a term of a company versus a company using the same data and using the same research technique through ChatGPT, do you think this is gonna make the projects more homogeneous and converging into same sort of like roadmaps or similar roadmaps?
I don't believe that competitive advantage has ever come from how you analyze the data, like the what users are telling you. I think it comes from that strategic aspect of how you then apply what you like your summaries and what you will build based off of that. So I don't think so.
Hi. My question is around how you use ChatGPT for your day-to-day work related to building the product or running your company. And my second question is why there is what the color represents in the screenshot? They both are looks like positive things, but why there is green and then one is red?
Just the design choices. I can truly say that they're just design choices because the colors have moved around. So no intention behind them. How we use ChatGPT, so for lots and lots of different things. So for product development, we've used a internal version of Craftful to inform the product as we're building it. We were reading both our own feedback, but also App Store or G2 reviews and Fast Radius reviews, and analyzing that to inform what we should do different from other kinds of like summarization tools that may be out there. The other piece is kind of more around like we use it in a ton of for like every kind of marketing purpose, every kind of text generation purpose. When you want to write like a polite email to someone, but you don't feel like it, you don't feel polite. That's a very easy case where you can enter some bullet points and ask it to generate a polite email back. There's so many those kind of like small use cases like that that I guess I personally end up using it for. That I've actually wondered sometimes if I were to get an actual like percentage of my time or output, what that would be, because there's so many things where it's like mostly my work, but there's some part that has been inspired by ChatGPT somehow. That'd be cool to see. No, I wish someone would build that product, by the way. That's not an actual pain point. No one should.
Hi, this is Anshu. So you mentioned how your company helps user research, which is such a key component of product management. You mentioned helps in asking follow-up questions. So is this based on after the fact, or is it during the actual interview itself? Like if you're doing an interview, does Craftful actually give you prompts? I was just thinking that maybe it could give you prompts and what questions to ask. Is that something Craftful is already doing, or what kind of?
Yeah, it's not something we're already doing, but we will be doing all versions of that. So yes, but that's not part of the product today.
Okay, so basically right now you can search existing data that has been imported based on customer interviews.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Two, actually. So one is ChatGPT has been trained on, and this always comes up, that it's been trained on data from a certain point, up to, I think it was October of 2021. And already we see, like if you use it regular, or use it a lot, you'll see places where that gets into trouble, where you're not necessarily getting the most current information. Do you think that's going to change in the future? Because it seems like it has limited, as time goes on, it's going to become less and less useful if that stays the same. Is that a point in time thing, or is that something?
Just a point in time thing. I think that's definitely gonna change.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. And the second question is, so I've been using ChatGPT quite a lot for looking at the day-to-day, like Gemma was talking about. and help me to like evaluate different features and actually go in and like explore like what are the use cases, even do prioritization. And it's pretty impressive the kind of things that it can do, although I think you still have to have an eye to be able to go over what it's generating for you, but it still can save hours. I'm curious when you look at, like, I think it can do a lot more, like, the way I've been using it, I've been, not to be afraid, but I've just been like, wow, I can use this for much more things than I thought it was possible, literally creating for me, like, using different prioritization matrices and helping me justify why I should do this or shouldn't do that. And, I mean, it's pretty impressive. I'm curious what your thoughts are on using generative AI in that space. Do you think that's going to continue to progress, or we'll see offerings in that space?
Yes. I think it's definitely going to continue. I mean, we hope to have offerings in that space. We hope to just have the toolbox to do all the different pieces. I do think that there's always going to be and kind of you were sort of alluding to, it's a little bit scary, right? Like, and I think that it will always need to have an operator. Not always, I don't know. It will always need to have an operator, but for the foreseeable future, it will need to have an operator. And so there's definitely, it's going to be collaboration. But I think, yes, definitely those kind of more generative tasks as opposed to analytical tasks, I think are definitely on the table as well.
I think Figma recently, it was Figma, had a feature where you can actually like ask it for a mockup. I did that with ChatGPT and I got the ASCII mockup, which is not very useful. But I think Figma is now, and that seems super, because I've built so many mockups throughout my career, but going back to what you said, did I want to? I had to use like Balsamic or something. I wasn't using InVision because I'm not a designer, but I needed something just to like communicate the ideas. But it's like, if something can do that for me or get me 95% of the way, it's not like I feel like that's taking work away from me that I actually don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Absolutely, and I think definitely for image generation generally, right? Like there may be things that you want to generate that is a mock-up, but also more like marketing collateral, right? To be able to get a first draft or a second draft done, and then it's more of a collaboration after that point.
Hi, my name is Malcolm, and you mentioned the ability to go look at the underlying data, and I was curious about, you view that like that sort of validation, seeing how this was compiled from, the original data. Is that like a general feature for these ChatGPT systems, or is that like, should there always be a way to look at the underlying data?
Yeah. I don't know that there always needs to be a way to look at the underlying data. I think that if it makes sense for the product and you feel like you need to have it so that people can validate and trust, you need to have it. But I don't think that every generated token needs to have a underlying validator associated with it. So I think there's probably going to be, what I envision for future products is that there's probably going to be something where you can validate some aspects of it just to get comfortable that the rest is right, unless there's a reason where you do want to be able to go back to the underlying data for other reasons, right? Like I guess in our example, you want to see the context, right? So there's a product reason to have it be there for other reasons, and then it does make sense.
Last question.
You mentioned a couple of different ways that generative AI can help change, the PM's daily life or within an org. Like, standard generative use case, build me an asset, improve this asset, working with it. But the example of slicing user research across a much broader set of people and generating a richer image and through aggregating that data, that's legitimately changing something about how prompt PM work is done, right? what are some of your other kind of favorite things that are parts of the PM world that are going to want to be reimagined because of these new kinds of capabilities? What else is really exciting to you?
Yeah, I'm really excited about all the like communication because both internal and external communication. So one aspect is just being communication with the users. So being able to, when a user has submitted a piece of feedback to you, but then you work that into your product that may be in a different way. You don't add an ability to edit in the Figma app. You do something else, but it's some variation. But because you now can go back to every single user that has asked something related and tell them, here's what we're doing related to what you asked. You now create this feedback loop where users feel heard, they feel ownership over the products. There's this kind of like IKEA effect where you're building a community around your product in a whole different way. I think that's something that's really powerful. It's something that like the first PM at a company is usually the founder. And the founders tend to do this with their product, right? Like they are building a community around their product. But they can only do that for a very short period of time with the very first few users that you have. And then you can't do it anymore because of scale. But be able to actually scale that to bigger products where you do have PMs. I think that's something that's really exciting. And that changes how PMs operate.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Yana, for giving us all your time for the Q&A, which was amazing. And this is a really exciting time to be a PM, I think, with what's coming down the pipe for AI. Awesome. Thank you again to Microsoft. This is an awesome space. We will be back. So thank you, Almina, for the food and the drinks and the great space. I'm now going to invite Kennedy up, and yeah, why don't you give us our closing?
I will leave the mic.
Oh.
Thank you. Hello everyone, it's so nice to see all of you here, and this is a wonderful talk. Thank you, Yana. I am Katie Welinder. As Glenn mentioned, I'm one of the co-organizers here, and during my daytime, I'm an AI product manager at Oracle. So today, based on the event that we've had, the food, we've had amazing food, I'm sure you all loved it. So we would love to have your feedback. So if you scan this QR code on the slides here, it will take you to a Google form. And you can talk to us about what's your favorite part of the event, what kind of topics would you like to see in the upcoming events, any specific speakers that you would want to recommend. If you want to appreciate us, please go ahead and do that. And talk about the food, what kind of food would you like, because that's something that we're famous for. The last time we had tacos, everyone loved them. Today we had pizzas and brownies. So please attend our next event. In the next event, we will have it on May 11th. And this event is going to be about how winning is a byproduct and 3 rules for a PM to become successful product leaders. So we're going to talk about how PMs can influence without authority and how they can rally a cross-functional team. And we're going to have a speaker who is Vishal Kapoor. He's a director of product at SHIP. I met him at a conference recently. He was a keynote speaker there, and he's going to talk about these things. So we hope you attend our next event, which is on May 11th. And we would love your feedback on today's event. So please take some time out to fill the form. We've made it very easy. There are very few mandatory questions, so we would love for you to share your feedback and please come to our next event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaiki. Yes. And as we mentioned before, we're not paid to do this. We need your help and your support. So we're also going to be looking for volunteers, and we're going to soon put out a call where you'll be able to fill out a form if you're interested in being a volunteer. We urge you to do that. Definitely keep coming. Let us know what we can do better. You're all amazing. Thank you for coming out, and have a great night. We've got about 20 minutes. We can just hang out, talk to each other, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event. And stay dry.